We are a family farm here in South Dorset. We milk on 3 sites, milking just less than 1,000 cows in total, rearing all the young stock within the business. We've got an arable unit as well.
We farm on 1,000 hectares. We don't own any of the land. The only property we own is a number of houses to house farm workers. Whilst my son and I are involved, but nowadays Will is the main driver of the business. My wife is a partner in the business and has a significant share of the business, but she has her own role working as a nutritionist at Bournemouth University. My daughter Katie, she is also a partner in the business, but lives and works in London. She doesn't take any income from the business, but her role in the partnership is there in case something happens to my wife and I, and for succession in terms of inheritance, it just makes it less complicated if she's already a partner.
The main driver for getting the family around the table to talk around succession was really to not mess it up, I guess. Is the family had seen over the years a number of examples where other farming businesses hadn't done a great job of succession and had ended up falling out through the process or just things not going well. And really the aim was to end up with a successful business in 30 years' time, as well as allowing each member of the family and all the members in the business, I guess, to achieve their goals. We didn't want me just standing on the sidelines for 10 years. Wanted to use some of that energy that I had and equally allow Dad to do some of the projects that he's done more recently as well.
For me, I've always been interested in getting involved in the farming world off farm. I've been involved heavily over the years in Arla as a representative, and one of my goals I had was that I wanted to go on and become a member of the board of directors of Arla. Our succession plan enabled that to be possible.
So the initial conversations were really just around the dinner table. I was still living at home at that point. We would chat about it in the evenings and decided it was a sensible thing to do. Our first succession planning consultant that we used was Sian Bushell. Knew of her, knew of the work that she did, and we thought that she was a sensible person to get involved. Me and Dad were both on board. My mum was really keen as well, and my sister was more than happy to be involved, and those were the 4 members at the first meeting. Everybody needed to be heard in that meeting. Everybody had valid points that they'd be bringing up, and it wasn't just about the farm, it was also about the family and about how the family would operate within the farming structure as well. Family time needed to be separate from farming time. It's like we needed to enjoy both elements of it.
I felt it was really important that we did have an outside person to advise us on how to go about this and do it in a structured way. And Sian was very good in setting up beforehand how to go about it. From my point of view, I think for my wife and I, it was to make sure that we could successfully retire when we wanted to and do some of the things that we wanted to before retirement, as I've already described about the work I'm doing now with Arla, but also after retirement with being able to travel and so on. And also we wanted sort of an agreement between our children, how they would have succession within the business, both whether we were still alive or had passed away. We have had reviews just to follow where we were on track, and also because of Will's having a partner who I think, had you married then or were engaged at that point? I think it was important to bring her into the process. Things change, our aims change within the business, Will's aims change. You know, now he has a daughter, you know, he has to think about the longer term future for his family and how that's going to work.
I think it's a really valuable bit of our relationship is the fact that I'm still able to take a lot of advice off of Dad and a lot of coaching off of him. Whereas I know that some families can get themselves into a situation through succession where the son almost doesn't want to take the dad's opinion too much into account because they want to sort of drive their own path kind of thing. And it's not necessarily that valuable because he's got heaps of experience and heaps of new learned knowledge over the last few years that are really worth bringing back into the business.
I think there's also about harnessing the power of youth within the business in a sense, because I think, okay, maybe the first 5 to 10 years, there's a lot of learning of how to manage and develop in a business. But then I think there's a period where people are between 30 and 50, where that's when they really drive a business. And after that, I think you tend to be more in a wind-down phase, and I see it in other farmers. I certainly recognise it in myself. I think you need to give the younger person who's really going to drive that business forward, give them their head and let them get on with it when they're in their prime to do it. And I think that's another key point if you want a successful business going forward. It is a bit difficult because there is a tendency that you can let things drift a bit. And I remember I'd said, right, in 5 years' time, where Will had been running one of the farms, I said, in 5 years' time, you can take over the whole lot. And it sort of got up to 5 years' time, and Will was like, well, when's it going to happen then? And I was thinking, okay, right. Because it's funny how, it's surprising how 5 years disappears quite quickly. So you've just got to be a little bit careful about that side of it, but you've got to remember when you make, as the older person in this equation, when you make the promises, be prepared to carry them out.
I think a key point in there as well is that you can't take anything particularly too seriously. It was something that was talked about in the first meeting, that was this sort of 5-year timeline, and said to Dad, oh, well, we did speak about 5 years, sort of, where's your current thoughts at? And then Dad was like, oh, I'm not really sure whether I'm ready to take that much of a step back just yet. And I was just like, that's fine, just walk away from it for a minute. And then 2 weeks later, he rang me up and was like, actually, how about I just completely step back out of the business and you take the whole lot on? And it was obviously something that just marinated in his brain for a couple of weeks, and that was where he decided to go with it. So it's interesting the way that things work out. But when Dad decided that he'd be taking a step back from the business, going back and studying his MBA, and then hopefully moving on to doing some more work within ALA, that was what prompted then doing the second succession planning. And it was really because for us at that point, there was a step change. I'm in a very lucky situation where, one, we're a pretty open family and we're willing to talk about this stuff, but also we've got parents that they also see the benefits of talking about succession planning. But I think it's much more difficult when you've got a party that doesn't want to be in the room, if you see what I mean. But all you can do is just keep trying to coax them into it, and maybe try and show them an example of where it's gone wrong or something like that.
With these changes in the inheritance tax rules, I think succession planning is even more important than it ever was. Just leaving it until the oldest generation passes away is certainly not where you should be going now. So therefore you need to plan it, and the two things together you need to plan. But I think you also, if you want your sons and daughters who are in your farm business to be motivated, you need to work with them and understand their needs and understand how that will work in terms of succession. And I think if you're the mother and father in that situation, you really need to plan this and talk to them. And I would really recommend using outside advice to help facilitate the meeting. I think particularly if you think there's any risk of conflict within the family, but I would highly recommend it to the older generation that it's something they should do sooner rather than later.
The long and short, if you want your business to continue beyond your own working life, then you've got to deal with it somehow. And so there's no reason not to tackle it. The only reason that you wouldn't tackle succession is if you planned on just selling up one day. But even that's tackling succession, it's just tackling it within your own brain.